Okay. Um, Good. Hello once again.
Hi.
Welcome to, thank you for your response. I really appreciate it. Welcome to the final workshop organized by the Student Accessibility Resources. I don't think I introduced myself. My name is Folu,
Hello.
and I'm one of the graduate assistants in this office. I basically help with learning skills and yeah, that's about me. So today we are going to be looking at the final exam preparation, and the aim is for you to know what you need to do before the exams and also how to prepare for the exams. So this is my agenda. This is the agenda for this meeting. We'll be looking at exam timeline, where we'll look at, oh, do you need to do before the exam, when the exam starts, and also after the exams. We would look at text question types, right? We'll look at multiple choice, true or false, so that you know what is expected for the
Okay.
question types. And then there was a particular information I saw from the counseling center, which I think I would like to share some of the tips when it comes to exam preparation. And finally, if you have any questions, please let me know. Now, because it's just both of us, you're free to ask me questions at any time. Feel free to jump in at any time. So usually before I start a workshop, I usually like do a poll, but because it's just both of us, I've removed all the polls. So I
Okay.
usually do polls to, gauge my audience, oh, do we have more freshmen? Do we have more sophomore, junior, senior, graduate students? And the reason is basically so that we can tailor our workshops to the audience that we get. So if we're getting more freshmen, we know, okay, we need to make more workshops that are targeted to them. So, but then because I already know of yours, there's no point doing the poll. All right. So now we're going to look at the exam timeline. We have before the exam, we have starting the exam, during the exam, and after the exam. What do you need to do before the exam? What do you need to do when the exam has started? What do you need to do during the exam? And then after the exam, what do you need to do, right? You would think that once an exam is done, that's it. Yeah, it can be true, but then there's some tips that I plan to share that can be helpful after your exam. All right. So before the exam, the first thing you want to do is, first of all, you want to find out what is going to be captured in your exam, what is covered in your exam, right? You want to know, for example, is it a cumulative exam, right? Some courses, the professors will say, oh, I'm going to cover everything from the beginning of the semester to the end of the semester. That's most likely a cumulative exam. So you want to know so that it can guide your study, right? Some professors will say, oh, it's everything after the midterms. So it's important that you know this before the exam so that you can prepare properly for the exam, right? So that you're not
Okay.
reading things that will not be captured because it can be very painful for you to go to an exam and everything you read did not come out and you're seeing something totally different from what you studied. So you need to know what is going to be on the test. You need to know the test type. Is it going to be short answers? Is it going to be multiple choice? Is it going to be calculations, right? You want to know this so that you can prepare accordingly. If it's short answers, you might want to know the definition of words. You might want to know maybe principles or let's say laws, depending on your field, right? So it's
Mm.
important that you know the question type for your exams. Now, once you know that, you also want to know the exam location and times, right? You want to know, is your exam going to be on Monday at 2 p.m. in Mackinock A101? You want to know this, right? You don't want to wait till the exam morning and then find out that, oh, you thought it was Mackinock when it's actually maybe Lake Superior Hall. That alone can actually destabilize you as a student, right? So you want to know this information. And the good thing is that most of this information is actually captured in your syllabus. If you go over your syllabus, you would see some professors would have specified, oh, the dates for the final exam, the time of the final exam, the venue, right? Some would say, oh, it's going to be online. Some would say, oh, it's going to be in person, right? All this information is most likely captured in your syllabus. Now, if you are
Yeah.
registered, go ahead.
I know that, yeah, and because I've been asking around for what like day the final exam is, and I know for my Plants of the World class, it's gonna be on Monday through Wednesday, the final, it's gonna be online. You can take it on any of the days kind of thing. So
Beautiful, beautiful. So that's actually impressive. Some people do not even know this information, and that's why we are doing this workshop, so that hopefully when they listen to this video, they would, when they watch the recording, they would probably find out from their professors. And one way is you can check your syllabus. You can also go to your professor's office, right? Most professors have office hours that you can just meet them to say, oh, when is our exam? When is our test? So that you can prepare accordingly. Right. And if you're taking your test through our office, one of the things I know is first of all, you must have scheduled the exam by now with our office. And then I know that a week before the finals, the testing team will send out the location and the time for your exam so that you are aware, like a week ahead, so that if you need to find the room, you need to do that before the exam day. So now, once you know that, the next thing you want to do is you want to look at study guide, you want to look at your syllabus. Some professors have like study guides for the different courses. I'm currently taking a class and the professor has given us like study questions for the exam, right? That's a good place to prepare for your finals because you know what is covered and what's not covered. And then there are some professors that the class before the finals, they will tell you, okay, this is what you should cover. Don't bother about this. This you need to know. Like, so professors give subtle hints on what to expect on your finals. So you need to check this study guides, you need to check the syllabus to see what they have provided, and then you need to study accordingly. Right. And then if, for example, maybe you're not doing well in your grades, you also want to find time. The good thing is after Thanksgiving, we still have a week. So you can actually meet your professors during that week to review your past exams or why did you not do well? What can be done, right? What do you need to
okay.
actually meet maybe a grade that that you have set as your goal for yourself. So you need to reach out to your professors ahead of time to actually like review your past exams, your past course. Right now, this is not a mandatory option, but we usually advise, especially for students that are not doing so well, so that you can still optimize and you can still take advantage of the finals to improve your grades if possible.
Okay.
All right. So before the exam again, there are other things you need to do. You need to study, right? If you don't
Yeah.
study, then it's most likely that you're not ready. It's most likely they're not going to get a good grade. So you want to study, but then when you want to study, we want to advise you to break down your notes, break down your topics, break down the chapters that you want to study into smaller sections that you can manage. Because one of the things that come with exam is because exam is around the corner, everybody's trying to read, everybody's trying to take in as much as possible. But that alone can actually put more stress on you than you think of. So if you
Well,
break
yeah.
down, go ahead.
And one thing is that I know there's like some classes where they think they got to like overview over the whole semester, and that's like a lot of notes for the taking when really it's just the last unit that's going to be tested. So just got to remember that.
Yes, yes.
Because
And
then you'll
go
get a
ahead.
bunch of information that you may have needed to know at one point, but now you don't. And instead of like all the information that you actually need, and that can be a problem. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's why I had mentioned that you need to find out what is covered in the test. Right. It's finals week, so you want to devote all your time to like the most important things, right? It's beautiful that you have so many topics covered in your class, but if it's not going to be quiz, you don't want to spend all your time reading those ones when you have actual work to do, right? So like you mentioned, you need to know what is covered and what's not covered and focus on what's not covered and focus on what's covered actually so that you can do well. And then there's the Pomodoro method. I think we talked about it in our last workshop where you study in small time blocks. So maybe you can set like a timer for 20 minutes to say, I'm going to study in the next 20 minutes, and then you take a break and then you continue. You repeat the cycle, right? So you want to study for smaller time blocks. And then we have the power study hour, which we advise. So before you even begin studying, you need to have a plan. What do I want to do within the next maybe 30 minutes or 1 hour, right? And then you need to study, active study, right? You need to study and then review what you study, take a break. We advise taking breaks while studying and then repeat the cycle.
Okay.
Now, go ahead.
I know, I was just saying, okay.
Okay, yeah, all right. And then when it comes to studying, we usually advise that the hardest subjects are the ones you should study first, right? When you still have a lot of energy, right? Because when you have like for courses that are harder, we usually advise that you even spend more time on them. So when you want to study, you need to study the harder ones first because then they require more energy as opposed to the ones that are relatively simple. Yeah, so you want to do that. And then
Hmm.
it might just be good that you change your location when you want to study, right? Studying on the bed on your bed, it works for some people, but it might not be the best thing, right? You might want to change your location, maybe go to the library. I was at the library yesterday and the day before, and the library is getting fuller. So you want to go to the library, you want to maybe block book rooms. So library has the option where you can book study rooms. So you want to book ahead of time if you intend to use the library. And if you're on campus, or if you're living on campus, most of the residential areas have study areas. Also, the academic building, Mackinock, Manitou, Horton, Hooker, well, that's a living center. Nehemiah, most of these places have rooms that you can actually stay and study. So you might just want to change where you currently study to, maybe a place where you can actually focus. And then
Okay.
now, while you're studying, it's possible to feel overwhelmed, especially when it's like a week to finals, you feel like you have a lot to cover, you feel like you don't have enough time. So in that kind of situation, you want to take a break, right? Because continuing in that state of mind would actually not yield the kind of results that you want. So it might be a good thing to just take a step back, maybe go for a walk, maybe, call your friend, call your loved ones, and just take
Yeah.
a step back during that period.
Okay.
Yeah. So sorry we're spending so much time on before the exam because the truth is like that's where you can really do so much. Yeah. Once you've done the exam, there's really nothing you can do during the
Well,
exam.
yeah.
What do you say?
I was just saying, yeah, like I know that for my plans to the world, what we do with every exam is because we always do them online, and we have this thing that we had to download at the start of the semester called
Okay.
Lockdown Browser, where basically once we have the exam,
Responders.
we have to
Mhm.
apply that, and then we can't open up any other tabs.
Yes, yes, that's responders. I also use it for one of my classes. Yeah. So yes, so like it's important, like you just mentioned, responders. You also want to be sure that the laptop that you're going to be using for your exam is such that it is compatible with responders, right? Because you don't want to start the exam and then discover that responders is not replying because it might be too late. Yeah, especially for online courses, your professor might not be with you at the time to help you address issues that may arise. So you want to check all this before the exam. I know some MacBooks are not really compatible with responses, especially depending on the kind of questions that will be on the test. So you want to confirm all this before the exam, right? So that you don't want things, you want to reduce the amount of things that stress you during the exam. And the system that is not working can stress you greatly. So you want to avoid that if possible. All right, so again, this is our last slide on before the exam. You want to relax your mind. Yes, it sounds very easy, but at the same time, we know that it's not easy, right? You have exams, you have maybe 5 courses, 4 courses, and probably you have exams back to back following each other. So maybe you have on Monday and then you have on Tuesday, or you even have 2 on Monday. It's enough to stress you, but you need to understand that you can not get the only time you can actually get your best result is when you're in a relaxed state. So to be able to relax your mind, one of the things you can do is to get enough sleep. During exam period, people do not sleep well. So you want
Hmm.
to try and prioritize going to bed early, right? You want to get enough sleep, you want to eat well, right? Someone was telling me a couple of years ago that when we actually read, we use a lot of brain energy, right? So one of the ways to regain is to eat well. Yeah, so you want to eat a full meal, you want to stay hydrated. Yeah, you want to
Hmm.
stay hydrated. I don't know, this might not be correct, but someone told me that if you're having headache, if you drink water, I don't know if it's medically tested, but you also want to stay hydrated because now you're using a lot of energy to read. So you want to stay hydrated. You also want to avoid negative thoughts. Now, when you are reading, it's possible, especially if you have a lot to cover and you feel like you don't have enough time, it's possible to start having thoughts like, oh, I'm just going to fail this course, I can't do it, it's too much work. I'm not so good enough, I'm not that bright. you need to avoid thoughts like this, right? You need to avoid thoughts like this because success and failure, I think it starts from the mind. So if you're not in the right state of mind, there's a very high chance that you might not do so well, right? So you want to avoid thoughts like that. And even while you're studying, you want to also be careful of the people that you surround yourself with. Anyone that is telling you, oh, you're just going to fail, don't bother, you want to avoid them as well, right? You want to
Yep.
ensure that you have a positive attitude towards your exam, towards everything. Yes, it might feel a lot, but then there is a difference between, oh, I can't do this, or if I read, then there is a higher chance. There's a difference between you saying you cannot do it and you telling yourself, oh, I can if I put in the effort. So you need to have a positive attitude towards your exam. Now,
Yeah. You know, sometimes I see success and failure as one the same because each time you fail, if you're really trying, you tend to learn something new, and eventually you'll start getting, better grades. You'll start to be more successful in said endeavor. Meanwhile, if you're continually successful, you might start to have it go to your head a little bit, and then you start to study less and less. You start to not work. It's like, oh, I'm good at this, and eventually you're gonna fail more and more frequently. So
mhm.
yeah.
Like you couldn't have said it. I couldn't have said it any better. Yes, I totally agree with your point on success and failure. Right. Thank you so much for that input. And I'm really hoping that when people watch these videos, they would also learn from what you've just said.
Okay.
All right. So now let's go to starting the exams, right? So the first thing you want to do is to come with all the tools you need to complete your exam. All right. It's funny. Last semester I had a class and one of my classmates came to the class without a pen. And it was supposed to be a paper exam. So I'm like, okay, how did you plan to take this exam? Because if you don't have your pen, it's most likely you can't write because you can't type, right? So you want to ensure that when you're coming for your class, for your exam, you come with all the tools required. You go with a pen, if possible, go with two, just in case one fails during the exam. Again, because you want to reduce anything that's going to stress you. If you have two pens, yeah, and one stops, you just switch to the next one. But then if you have just one and maybe you don't get this spare, that's enough. Alone can stress you. So you want to go with everything that you need. If you need a pen, you go with like two. If you need pencils, go with two or one. You need your eraser. If it's a mathematical course, you want to go with your calculators, right? If you're allowed maybe a formula sheet, you want to go with your formula sheet because you don't know. So in as much as you have the formulas, you don't know which one the professor would bring out. So you want to go with everything that you think you need for this exam. And then also you need to focus on the content of the exam and not how you're feeling at the moment. When you have a lot on your mind, it's enough to overwhelm you that you forget, you start being in your feelings that, oh no, this and that. So you actually need to come out of it and just believe in yourself. You can do it. Yeah, you have studied. You have spent nights reading. So if you have read enough for this exam, you can pass it. So I think we need to, yeah, this is me talking to myself as well, that we
Yeah.
actually need to to believe in ourselves. Yeah, right. If I put in the work, if I've done our assignment, if I've done everything, we can actually do it. And one of the beautiful things I like about GVSU and it actually courses is the fact that there are different things that contribute to your grades. Your final exam is just one of them, right? If you've been doing well in your assignments, in your class activities, in your projects, then the exam is just one part, right? If you have done so well, then if you can do well in other parts, there's nothing that stops you from doing well in this one. So you need to believe in yourself, right?
Hmm.
And then also you need to look over the test before you start, right? So you know how like when you get your test question before you start, you need to go over the questions, right? You want to know which ones can I answer on time, which ones do I need to spend more time on? You need to actually like go over the questions before starting. Don't start with the difficult ones if you have simpler ones that you can do easily, right? And then also you need to manage your time, right? Even though and most exams are based on knowledge and time management, right? I might be wrong, but um, even if you know the content of the exam, if you don't manage your time well, you probably not even finish it, right? So that's
True.
why you need to know how many hours do I have for this exam? Do I have 4? If I have 4 hours, okay, how many questions do I have? Do I want to spend an hour on each question? Do I want to spend 30 minutes on each question? Which ones can I finish on time, right? You need to know all these things so that you are not, so that you're not panicking when it's maybe like 10 minutes to the end and then it's covered that you've not answered most of the questions. So you want to manage your time well.
Yeah, and sometimes like say you did have like 4 hours to do 4 questions,
Mhm.
I'd say probably try to get it done in around like 45 minutes so you have some spare, but you're also not trying to cut it in like half the time. Another thing with like looking at the whole test before starting. Now, this isn't an often occurring thing, but sometimes you will get an answer given to you by like the next question. Like you might not have even known the thing yet, since you
True.
looked ahead, it already gives the answer. So it's like, oh, well, I know what to do for that one. So yeah.
I totally agree. True, true, true. Yes, true. Thank you so much for that point. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to during the exam. So one of the first things you want to do is to read and follow the directions carefully. Read, it's very important that you read the instructions. A friend of mine was giving me a story. I don't know how true it was about how they had like maybe so in my country where I come from, when you get to in high school, when you get to a particular class, you instead of answering 6 questions, you're allowed to answer 4, right? So you can choose any 4 that you want to answer. But then this particular exam, the instruction was like, um, I think the question said question 1 is compulsory or something like that. And then question 1 had like the higher percentage of the mark. But for people that didn't read, they didn't do question 1. And so by the time they realized it was rather too late, right? They could have done question 1, maybe just 1 question instead of doing 4. So what I'm trying to say is that it's very important that you read questions, right, carefully before answering, because the questions would give you an idea of what is required. Or are you supposed to select 2 answers? Are you supposed to select 1? Are you supposed to select 3? Are you supposed to fill in the gap? You need to read the questions. So you need to read the directions, the instructions for the exam, because it would guide you on how to answer the question. Also,
Okay.
like I mentioned earlier, go ahead. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, you want to start from the easy questions. If there are questions that you can easily answer, you should start with those ones first and leave the harder questions for later, because that way you're able to manage your time well. So if you answer the easy questions first, and then you can come back to the harder
All
ones
right.
later. Then also, when you're answering your questions, it's okay to skip a question. So let's say I'm going over the questions. I know question 1, I don't know question 2, question 3, question 4. I can skip them, right? You don't have
Mhm.
to follow them in sequential order because that might affect your time. So do the ones you know first. Feel free to skip questions. But the only advice is for questions that you're skipping, you need to mark them. So if it's a paper-based exam, you can just put like maybe an asterisk or something on the paper that when you see it, you know, okay, this has not been answered. If it's responders, I know you can flag questions, right? So that way you know that, okay, and even if it's responders or Blackboard, they even keep track for you to say 2 questions unanswered. So you know, and you can go back to them. And then also you want to check questions that you have not answered when you're done. You also want to check for errors. So it's also good that as part of your time management, you need to ensure that you leave enough time, if possible, to go over your answers. Because sometimes you've answered some questions, we think we've answered them correctly. But by the time you read them again, you discover that, oh my, I just made a very big mistake, right? So if yeah, so it happened to me in a class. I think I took computer networking that last semester. And the professor asked us, I think it was collision or something. So there were like 3 concepts. The professor had taught us one in class, and then he brought a different concept in the exam, which was different from what he had taught us, right? So I'd answered the question. I really thought I'd answered it well. I'd written like a paragraph. And then guess what? By the time I was going over, I discovered that I had just I had just answered this wrongly. So I had to clean everything and start all over. So that just buttresses the fact that you need to review your answers. Now, this is not mandatory. This is not mandatory at all. You are free not to even do it. But one of the recommendations I make, especially for paper-based exam, is to use a pencil rather than a pen. And the reason is because with pencil, you're able to erase easily, right? You're able to submit a neat work as opposed to pen. You know, with pen, once you write on, except if you use wipeout, right? You have to literally cancel it, and you don't want to submit a work that is not looking tidy. You don't want to give your professor a hard time in grading your work. So now this is not mandatory. It's not a tip, right? But it's just like personal what I would do if I was taking a paper-based exam. I would use a pencil because that way I can erase and my work will still look neat. And then finally, don't be shy to ask for help, right? Because it's an exam, you might feel that the professor is not going to help you. The professor is there to help, right? Sometimes you need clarity on what is even required because sometimes the questions can be confusing. Don't forget that it's exam, you're under pressure. So even if it's something you know, you might not just be clear, right? Your professor is there to guide you. So feel free to ask questions. I don't know, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I guess there's something I could add. So um uh with the whole like kind of preparation before and to not like overstress, eat well, be hydrated, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Another thing that I recommend is exercise, and that might surprise some. I know not everyone likes exercise, and you don't have to do anything heavy or anything, but like exercise is just as good for your mental health as it is for your physical health. So that could, I'd say that's probably useful, that could probably help
Yeah.
you a lot, relieves a lot of stress.
Yes, yes, I agree. Exercise is very, very good, like you said, for your mental health. And the beauty is the rec center is free for you as a student. Once you go there with your student ID, you're free to use it. So you can always go there at any time to
Yeah.
exercise, even if it's just for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes, just to distress and, feel in a better state. Yeah, thank you for
Mhm.
that very helpful tip.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone to the rec center a few times. I usually go to the gym and stuff, and that always helps with stress and whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's really nice. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, so after the exam, now it's possible something that happens. I don't know if it has ever happened to you before, but after the exam, you start doubting your answers. Oh, did I write the correct answer? Or sometimes you even go and check your book, just to be sure that you did the right thing. Now, after the exam, you just need to know that what you've done your best, right? You've given it your
Hmm.
best. You have studied, you have spent days reading and preparing for this exam. Now you're done with the exam, you have given it your best. And so because you have done that, you should feel proud of yourself. You have just finished a semester, you have just finished a course. So I'd like to say, like, don't be hard on yourself. Like, don't be stressed because now you're waiting for the result. Am I going to pass? Will I fail? You need to know that you've done your best and you can only do your best, really, right? Like, you don't need to stress. You don't need to, how there's this saying, you don't cry over spilled milk. It's already spilled, right? You can't pack it again. So you've already taken the exam. So provided you've given it your best, be proud of yourself. And even if you have not given it your best, yeah, be confident that you have done what you could do at the time, right? Can you be better? Yes. But that time you have done what you could do. And so once you're done, relax. The results will be posted. Don't lose sleep because of the results. Just know that you have done your best, and your best is
Hmm.
all you can actually do, right?
Yeah.
All right. So we have text question type. Let me look at the time. Yeah, we're almost done. Oh, I'm so sorry. We have text question types. We're just going to run over this. There's true and false, multiple choice, essay, closed test rather, and multi-response question. These are some of the test response types. This is not all, right? But then these are typical test question types that you would get on your exam. And it's important that you know what to do when you see this question so that they are not new to you. So this is true, false. You can see a sample from Blackboard, right? So you have true and false means you have just two options. You have to pick one, right? Given a statement. So you need to be able to read the statement to say, okay, is this statement true? Yes or no, right? If it's true, it is true. If it's false, it is false. And then now you have to read the statement. So when it comes to answering this kind of question, you need to understand the statement because professors like to be tricky where they change some words or they put a not somewhere or they negate it. So if you don't understand the question, you might just think, oh, it's true when actually it is false. Or you might think it's false when actually it is true. So you need to be very, very careful and read the questions properly. Read them, be sure that you understand them before selecting an option. Now, it's also possible, if you don't know it at the time, you're not compelled to answer it sequentially. You can always keep it and come back to it so that you can give it more time, right? Don't spend too much time on it, especially if you're not sure if you know the answer at the time, right? So these are just tips on true and false questions. I wouldn't want to keep us on this call for too long, but I'll be sharing the slides. So for anybody that wants to read, they're free to read it, right? And then one tip for exams that I want to give is, regardless of whether you know the question or not, never leave a question unanswered, right?
Yeah, true. Just gotta, you see, it's like, okay, I don't have the time to figure out all these, like I'm running out. Just start, putting them in because there's a chance you might get some of them right. So
Oh, yes. So just take a guess. What's the worst that can happen? If you leave it unanswered, you fail. But if you take a guess, right, you have just increased your chances of getting a mark, right? It might not be correct, but at least you tried, right? So regardless of whatever it is, always don't leave a question unanswered with short answers. So there's this is not a tip. This is just a story I'm going to give you. So when I was in college as an undergraduate, I took a course and there was a question I did not know. Like, guess what I did? I just wrote everything I could remember from that book. I just answered it complete. I just gave a completely different answer, right, to the question, because I'm like, I can't leave. It's short answer. You can't leave it blank, right? So I just wrote something, a totally different topic. I don't know if I got a grade or two, maybe 1 or 2 marks just for, for writing down something. But then, so like what I'm just trying to say is that don't leave any question unanswered, right? If you don't know it, like if it's take a guess, what's the worst that can happen? You get 1 mark for your effort, right? 1 is better
yeah.
than 0. So give it, yeah. And then we have multiple choice questions where you have several questions and you have to choose an answer based on the several questions. Again, it's always important to read the questions properly, right? You need to read the questions properly. Now we have multiple choice and multiple responses. With multiple choice, you have several options, but only one is correct, right? So you need to be able to understand the question properly. It's very important. Understanding is key to answering questions in an exam. So you need to be able to understand the question properly so that you can select the right answer, right? Now, some professors are very tricky. They try to give you confusing answers. So one of the things you can use in multiple choice is elimination, right? So let's say you have 4 points, there are some that are totally wrong. You can just cross those ones out. So you're left with only the questions, the answers that you think are correct, and then you can focus on those 2 answers to say which one is actually the correct answer, right? So you can use the elimination method for multiple choice. And again, if you've read the question 1,001 times and you feel like, I don't know this, nothing's not coming from anywhere, you can just take a guess. Always at least try. Yeah, what's the worst that?
Yeah.
Anyways. And then we have essay questions. So for essays, these are basically, like, it can be short answer, it can be paragraph. So with essays, I would say read the questions, the instructions. I would say also, like, professors would give you an hint of how they want you to answer questions. And one of beauty is we've done midterms now, so you know how your professor grades, you know what they expect for each questions. So when you're answering your essays questions, you want to ensure that you understand the question, right? You want to ensure that you answer every part of the question. So for example, you can have a question that is like, what is a noun? Right? And then continuation for that question, give examples of nouns, right? And then the question can now be, okay, which of this is a noun? So that's one question. So when you're answering, you want to ensure that you answer the 3 parts. So I think the first thing you need to do is look at the question, divide it into all the parts, and ensure that you answer each part of the question, right? So that you don't lose a mark or 2 because you omitted a part, right? That's something that happened in one of my tests, my midterms, right? Professor actually gave us questions that had different parts, but then we didn't know because I was not the only one affected that we're supposed to answer all, because in our mind we thought, okay, this is actually continuation. But then one of the things we learned, or I learned from that experience, is you need to be able to break down the question into different parts and ensure that you answer each one of them in your answer. Your answers should be clear and straight to the point, right? What is a noun? Don't start giving us the origin of noun. Say noun was formed by. That's not what they're asking. What is a noun? A noun is go straight to your point, because your script is not the only one they're grading. They have several scripts to grade, and we find out you actually have a limited timeline to submit your grades. So that's why you cannot afford to be beating around the bush, right? So there's something called a cloze test. So cloze test is basically tests that have like blanks and you have to fill in the words, right? So they can say a noun is dash name of any, so you have to fill in the words, right? So some professors would give you options where you can choose from. Some professors would expect that you know from their lecture notes. So in this kind of situation, you want to also ensure that you know the lecture notes to the point where you can actually fill in the blanks yourself. And then we have multiple response. So this is a sample multiple response question. So basically you have a question with several answers. Everything can be correct answer. Like this question, where do you use the internet, right? You can say at home, you can say at work, you can say in school. So based on what has been covered in class, you are supposed to select all the answers that are correct, all the answers that apply to this question. Now, the trick with multiple choice question is they can have a full grade and each answer would have like a subset of the grade. So let's say, for example, this question 4 is a 5-point question. Yeah. So each response, let's assume all the responses are correct. That means you're supposed to select all to get your 5 marks. If you select only 2, you only get 2 out of 5. If you select 4, you get 4 out of 5. So you need to know again, you need to understand the question very well so that you can be able to answer them properly, right? So you can be able to answer them, and you need to select all the answers that apply. If you are not sure, always skip and come back, right? Now, some of the tricks that professors do is that one of the options they can also include is all of the above, right? So if you feel like everything is correct, feel free to select that option.
Okay.
And then we have common exam errors that people make. We're just going to go over this quickly. One of them is to answer with the wrong list or wrong concept. Yeah, and so basically this happens when one of the reasons for this kind of error is you have memorized the materials, right? It happens a lot with maths, right? You have memorized the material in a way that you have just memorized the question with the answer. It's just like programming. Yeah, they tell you, okay, maybe in class they ask you to write a program that would divide each number by 2. You have memorized it. Now we are giving you a question to say write a program that will divide each number by 3. Because you memorize division by 2, there's a probability that you will write by 2, which is actually wrong, right? That is not the correct question. So you need to ensure that you understand when you're studying, ensure that you're not just studying, you're understanding the general picture and you're thinking of how you can apply it to different problems. Because that way, if you see a different problem in your exam, you are able to tackle it, right? And then also another problem we see with students, they can write sketchy answers. So your answer is not direct. And this has to do with note taking. If you're not taking proper notes, it will also affect how you answer questions. Another one is not knowing how to apply the material to new situations. Again, this happens in maths, especially in math courses. So, you know, with maths, they give you examples and then they give you different problems. You need to be able to understand the general concepts, right? You need to be able to, for example, if you have formulas, you need to be able to understand how the formulas work, what part of the formula represents what, so that if you're given a different problem, you're able to address those problems. But in a situation whereby you don't know this, then there's very high chance that you would not do well. All right, so these are final tips from the GVSU Counseling Center. One of them, like we have mentioned before, know what is covered in your exam. It's very, very important. And then again, you need to know the type of question. Is it going to be multiple choice? Is it going to be delivered through Blackboard? Is it going to be short answers? Is it going to be calculations, right? I'm taking a course that has everything you can think of, true or false, multiple choice, short answer, multiple options. So you need to know all this, right? And you need to start reviewing for your exam early. Don't wait till the last day, right? Beauty is that we still have 2 weeks to the exam, so you need to start as soon as possible, right? Don't wait till after Thanksgiving. Yes, go and have food with your family, but as you're eating turkey or you're eating your favorite dish, be using a style to look at your book so that you don't come and feel like you have a lot on your plate. And then review in small chunks. So we can say, oh, you want to study for an hour now, in the morning, maybe in the evening, you study for another hour, but try and review your books early. And then this is very important. When you go for your exam, don't be impressed by people that finish early finishers, and people that 20 minutes into the exam, they are done. You know, it can affect you as a person to say, oh, wow, that's interesting. Like, I'm still writing up. I still probably have 10 questions. Don't be impressed by that. They might be very good and they're done, right? They might also not know what to write and they're like, you know what, I can't sit down here. Let me just get out instead of sitting down here for another 3 hours when I don't have anything to write, right? Or there are different reasons. Some people are fast writers, right? Some people are very fast. Some of us, we take our time. So you need to not allow things like that affect you. Remember that it's a test. You are on your own lane. You are taking your test. You are not going to be graded based on the person's performance. So you need to give it your best and don't let things like that distract you. All right. So do you have any questions for me? Any comments that you'd like to add? Any tips that you'd want to share for people that may watch these videos later?
Seems pretty straightforward. I think I said, I mean, I've asked my questions and I think I've did my tip with the whole exercise thing. So let's just get an overview. So we of course, you know, gotta do a lot of studying beforehand. We gotta make sure not to stress out too much. We gotta keep physically healthy. We gotta make sure we know what's on the test. So like, you know, maybe not like an entire semester's worth of work, but just like one unit perhaps. And then you gotta check the time, you know, see like how much should I put into each question, and then like, you know, read the whole thing before even starting. And then when you're done, don't immediately try and like check your grade, just try to relax a little bit. Did I get it all?
Yeah, you did. You gave a very good summary. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being my only audience. Hopefully, in the next semester, I would have more people join these workshops. Thank you so much, and
Yeah,
enjoy the rest of your day.
you too.
All right. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.